The FBI are now openly targeting Trump supporters ahead of 2024.
Mr. Reagan.
Have you bought one of my mugs or t-shirts? Well, what are you waiting for? Christmas is coming. Eventually. Now, you've probably heard about this MAGA extremism categorization by the FBI. I think it's been reported everywhere. And, usually I only like to chime in on underreported stories, but this is such a frustrating development. It so pisses me off that, I just had to say something. Yeah, I get that it's just more of the same from the corrupt FBI, but seriously, you are now creating an official terrorist category for Trump supporters? I mean, what the actual Now, I have been getting fit lately. I'm lifting, I'm walking more, I'm eating right, I'm eating less, a lot less. And I'm going to make a full video about all this very soon, so stay tuned for that. But by now, I think we all know that the food pyramid that's been pushed by the government for so long, it's not really the perfect prescription for good health. And for some of us, the food pyramid just makes us sick and fat. And according to Dr. Gundry, a world-renowned cardiologist, many of the foods in this food pyramid contain toxins that can cause digestive issues. According to Dr. Gundry, warning signs include weight gain and fatigue, and also digestive discomfort and stiff joints and even skin problems. Well, Dr. Gundry explains that these side effects are often mistaken for normal signs of aging because digestive issues develop usually over a matter of years and sometimes even decades. And Dr. Gundry asserts that the damage I mentioned is probably caused by so-called health foods, and it's far from normal. And I'm a strong believer that aging does not have to coincide with deteriorating health as people tend to believe. So if this guy has a fix for deteriorating health, I am all for it. And fixing your health, he asserts, is very simple. You just have to know which foods are actually healthy and which contain this hidden potential toxin. So you can go out and find this yourself at gutcleanseprotocol.com/Reagan. That's gutcleanseprotocol.com/Reagan. And you can, of course, click on the link in the description below this video to check that out. All right, so this is one of my favorite sources of news, Zero Hedge. The FBI creates MAGA extremist category, targets Trump supporters ahead of 2024 election. Now, here's the weird thing about this, right? They did this, I think, basically either right before, I think this is right before Hamas attacked Israel. And it's like, seriously, guys, you really think MAGA extremists are the real threat to America? Since the Hamas attacks on Israel, there has been a lot of scary stuff going on, right? I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but 2 Swedish nationals in Belgium were just murdered by essentially an Islamic terrorist who got a video of himself doing this and was like, ha ha ha, look at this. I killed Swedish people for us Muslims and stuff like that. Like, that is the danger, right? That's the real danger. It's not MAGA extremists, but they got all their focus on us, Trump supporters. I don't think that this is because of an actual danger to the nation. I think there's other reasons that I think you guys know what I'm talking about. But let's go ahead and read this story from Zero Hedge. The Biden FBI has quietly created a new category of extremists that it seeks to track and counter: Donald Trump's army of MAGA followers ahead of the 2024 election, according to prolific and well-connected anti-war journalist and political commentator William Arkin, who has previously reported on the FBI's efforts to, quote, fight MAGA terrorism, end quote. In a Wednesday Newsweek article, Arkin revealed that the vast majority of FBI investigations into anti-government activities are of Trump supporters, and I've heard that as well from other sources. The FBI is in an almost impossible position, a current FBI official told Arkin, who added that the agency's stated intent is stopping a repeat of January 6th type incidents, which was riddled with feds, exactly, while balancing the constitutional right of Americans to protest the government, especially at a time when the White House is facing congressional Republican opposition, claiming that the Biden administration has weaponized the Bureau against the right wing. It has to tread very carefully, the official continued. How about this? How about treading carefully by not targeting Trump supporters completely inappropriately? That's maybe a good idea. That's a good way to tread carefully, because we're not actually doing anything violent, you morons. Sorry, got out of control there for a second. Newsweek spoke to over a dozen current or former government officials who specialize in terrorism in a 3-month investigation to understand the current domestic security landscape and to evaluate what President Joe Biden's administration is doing about what it calls domestic terrorism. Most of the people interviewed requested anonymity because they were not authorized to talk publicly, were reluctant to stray into partisan politics, or feared repercussions of speaking frankly. Of course they would. Newsweek has also reviewed secret FBI and Department of Homeland Security data that tracks incidents, threats, investigations, and cases to try to build a better picture. While experts agree that the current partisan environment is charged and uniquely dangerous with the threat of not only violence, but in the most extreme scenarios, possibly civil war. Okay, no, not really violence, but yes, civil war. Like if the DOJ and the FBI and all of these other players, the Democrat Party, all these other players become deeply corrupted to the point where we no longer have faith in America, in our elections. Yeah, that might actually happen. And I'll get to that a little bit later. Many also question whether terrorism, quote unquote, is the most effective way to describe the problem. Yeah, no joke. Or that the methods of counterterrorism developed over the past decade in response to Al-Qaeda and other Islamist groups constitute the most fruitful way to craft domestic solutions. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you probably shouldn't apply the same practices that we have developed to fight Al-Qaeda and other extreme Islamic groups. We should not use those same techniques to target Trump supporters. Yeah, maybe step back a little bit, FBI, for crying out loud. We would note that an FBI whistleblower in March claimed that the agency pressured him to inflate domestic terrorist figures against conservatives, and that the agency created a specific threat tag for pro-lifers, Threat SCOTUS 2022, following the leaked Supreme Court opinion on abortion, and not a threat tag for violent leftists who threatened SCOTUS justices. The FBI told Newsweek in a statement that the threat posed by domestic violent extremists is persistent, evolving, and deadly. The FBI's goal is to detect and stop terrorist attacks, blah, 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 blah. This is obviously BS, right? That is obviously BS. They are targeting Trump supporters. And let's get into why. Look, we all know that the FBI has been doing this for some time. In fact, 2 months ago, the FBI went to Utah and they murdered a Trump supporter for using violent rhetoric about Joe Biden and other Democrats. This is really a thing that flippin' happened. Now, it is unclear to me whether this guy shot at the FBI and the FBI retaliated or what happened. I haven't been able to figure that out. I'm not sure that the FBI even released a statement on it, but it looks like somebody in the FBI basically just wanted to make an example out of this guy. It looks like this is a message to Trump supporters. Do not say things that we don't like or you will be murdered. But you know what? Tons of people used violent rhetoric and still use violent rhetoric about Donald Trump. George Lopez posed this image of then President Vicente Fox holding the decapitated head of Donald Trump. Was George Lopez murdered by the FBI? Was he even investigated? Of course not. Kathy Griffin had her famous Trump decapitation photo shoot. Kathy Griffin, as far as I'm aware, is still alive. Marilyn Manson also featured a decapitated Trump in a promo for a music video. I don't believe that the FBI murdered Marilyn Manson. Madonna famously suggested that she wanted to murder Trump by blowing up the White House.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Was Madonna murdered? Of course not. Johnny Depp joked about murdering Trump. Anthony Bourdain spoke about murdering Trump. Big Sean, Pearl Jam, Snoop Dogg, Rosie O'Donnell, Larry Whitmore, Robert De Niro, and the list goes on and on. Not to mention the thousands of crazy protesters with their violent placards and crazy leftists online who have tweeted their desires to see Donald Trump dead. I did an entire video about this when Donald Trump caught COVID. There was a trend among some particularly sadistic leftists to post what they believe to be an actual satanic curse against Donald Trump, trying to end him via witchcraft. Leftists are weird, man. And look, obviously I'm not suggesting that the FBI should go murder whatever leftists are using violent rhetoric against Donald Trump, like they clearly do to conservatives. But what I am saying is that the FBI seems to only take violent rhetoric seriously, investigate, arrest, and murder people when it's a conservative using violent rhetoric against leftists. And we all know you don't have to use violent rhetoric. A conservative just has to walk through the Capitol building during a protest or be a member of a group that the FBI doesn't like for the FBI to go after them. Their criteria seems to soften by the day. Soon, you'll just have to look like a conservative and you'll be in trouble. John Fetterman might be in trouble soon just for wearing too much Carhartt. Now look, the FBI has essentially created a pre-crime law enforcement strategy. They've apparently decided that the conservative culture in America is so saturated with potentially violent terrorists that the best way to go after these potential terrorists is to target them before they commit their inevitable violent terror attacks. There is, of course, one problem with this strategy, which is that every American citizen is supposed to be presumed innocent. By presuming that conservatives are guilty of pre-crime, the FBI has developed a strategy of entrapment. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really understand why the Whitmer defendants or the January 6 defendants have not all been able to defend themselves using this argument. I understand that the FBI has been less than forthcoming with exculpatory evidence for the January 6 defendants, but these Americans do have a legal right to all evidence that could exonerate them. And a good team of lawyers should be able to get these cases thrown out. There was one attempt that I read about, where January 6 defendants argued entrapment. And this defense was, I'm not joking, dismissed by the judge. The judge in that case was this man, Amit Mehta. And this guy is the deepest of deep state puppets. He has been involved in a variety of cases involving Donald Trump, and he always rules against him. In lawsuits against Donald Trump, Mehta ruled that there was plausible evidence to suggest that Donald Trump engaged in a conspiracy with organized groups to use any means, including violence, to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Okay, so you know that a guy who makes a ruling like that, he's not a serious person. This is a puppet. This is a guy doing the bidding of the left. He is not an impartial judge. He's an anti-Trump activist, and he's in a very powerful position, and this makes him a deadly weapon for the deep state. There is no longer any justice in America, ladies and gentlemen, not if you're a conservative. We have gone into full 1984-style totalitarianism from the left. And if I'm right about the 2024 election, Trump won't even get on the ballots in the swing states. The election will effectively be stolen and will either be entirely controlled by the deep state from that point on, or else Democrats will find out what a real insurrection looks like. And I'm not hoping for any of that. I'm not suggesting any of that. I don't want any of that. But it's looking more and more like that's where we're headed. And if I'm right, then it makes a lot of sense that the FBI, if they are deep state controlled, would make a MAGA extremist category. Because if you plan to incite a civil war, it's best to keep an eye on those most likely to fight against you in that civil war. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Buy all of my stuff at my Teespring site. And remember, it's not that all liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to."